Hello, Amy. Okay. All right. Tracy, you got to start.
Yeah,
Dr.
hell, the
Reynolds,
game's still here.
Dr. Reynolds, did you get a response from Miss Raymond?
Hold on, I'm on the phone with her now. I'm trying to walk her through.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right, we'll hold. Thank you.
And see if I can do that too.
Sounds good.
Oh,
Okay.
wait.
I'm sorry, President Darden,
just
please
gonna
go
put
ahead
the
and get
phone
started, and I'll walk her through in the background, okay?
I'm sorry, say that one more time, Dr. Reynolds. I didn't hear you.
I said, please go ahead and get started. I'll walk her through in the background, and she'll join us as soon as she can.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Steve. I'm ready when you say go. All right, good evening, everyone. It is 6:38. Thank you for joining us at the Board of Education's work session, and it is 6:38, and I am calling the meeting to order. Okay, first up, we have statements from the public. Tracy, who is up first?
So our first speaker is Fidel Suzuki, and he's in the waiting room. I'm going to let him in now.
Okay. Let's see. Like his.
It just says connecting to audio.
Yeah, he might be having some difficulty. Dr. Reynolds, is Miss Raymond, is she iPad 6?
That might be Fazal.
Yes, she is. Yes.
Oh, but it,
She comes.
Okay, thank you.
okay, great. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Siddiqui is still connecting to audio, and hi, Ashley. So he might just be having some connectivity issues. Amy is in the waiting room now. I guess we'll give him a few, like another minute to see if it'll kick in, and then if not, we'll switch and have
Okay. I put Amy in and put him in the waiting room.
Okay. All right. So Amy, can you hear us? I see you're unmuted, I believe.
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. Before you go, just a reminder to everyone in regards to our public comments, no comments on any personnel matters can take place. So if we could just please respect that. But other than that, Amy, we're ready for your public comment or question or statement.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Good evening. Happy New Year to all the board members and Dr. Reynolds and Dr. Chase.
Happy
I
New Year,
actually,
Amy.
can you hear me?
Yes, Happy New Year. I was just saying.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So a couple of things. I have sort of 3 points that I would like to ask. First one is regarding international baccalaureate, the diploma program. As a parent with a 9th grader, and I'm also a real estate agent, I was telling somebody, one of my clients, about the programs we have. And IB program, the diploma program, is actually something we should be talking about. Yet when I went to our own home district to look for information so that I could learn more about it, because I have a 9th grader, I can't really seem to find anything. Under the Woodlands Middle School, it only has IB middle years program, community project, MYP subject grades, and middle years program. It really doesn't talk about um, anything about the IB diploma program that we have in place. So first of all, I would like to see more of that so that you could educate parents, such as myself, and also so that everybody can be aware we have that program going.
Okay.
So that's one. Two, I wanted to find out from the board. I don't know how likely it is that we're going back to school, given that the COVID numbers are rising, and from all my friends in healthcare, the numbers are rising. So okay, fine. What are the board members doing regarding our district building conditions? Is there anything happening that we should be aware of? What can we do to improve while we have limited number of kids? These are the things I would like to know. And last but not least, I wanted to know what the timeline is for the superintendent search so that we could be involved and we know what to expect.
Okay. Thank you, Amy. So we'll definitely share this information in regards to needing to amp up our promotion and awareness of our IB program. What is the board doing to improve? As far as facilities where we're at right now, I know we were making some fixes here and there. For something more in depth, I'll have to get back to you, Amy, in regards to that. And as far as the timeline, I believe on the Ivy would know too, because she helped and Laser helped with it too. We do have on our board page, if you go through the superintendent search one, you should come up and find like this graphic timeline of the process moving forward. So the last thing that was done was that the application closed, I believe, last week sometime. And so the search company will be looking through those candidates and vetting them.
Oh, okay, so I'm looking at so just Antoinette, just to let you know, yes, there is a page there, but what it does is it says stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. It doesn't really have a date. So we don't, what I want to know is there like a calendar date so I make sure I don't miss that meeting?
No, there's not a calendar date. When we do have a definitive date, we will share that out because there is in that, I guess, those timelines, there are more opportunities for our community to participate in it. So once we have the definitive date, we will definitely share the information.
I see. Okay, thank you.
No problem. David, I saw your hand up.
Regarding the facilities piece, the one project that's standing out at this point, I believe we submitted plans to for the mansion roof, and those had to be updated. And the last update I checked on was October 20th, and 8 to 10 weeks out from that. So sometime in January, if all goes well, then we may be authorized to go ahead and do something about that, and we have funds for that. In terms of other projects, we have the building conditions survey, and we have a request out to BBS architects to say which of these items on the building conditions survey are priority year 1 and year 2, and those will compete with our list of projects where we did some temporary fixes for the ventilation. So the idea is to get together with BBS architects. Once they've given us that information, have another meeting and a walkthrough of the priority 1, priority 2 stuff. So stay tuned.
David, can I just ask, so at some point, right, we as a district have to figure out how much money we're spending to patch things up year to year versus consolidation, correct? And that's really
Correct.
what I'm trying to
We're
find out.
sitting on $4.1 million worth of reserve funds that we can allocate in various ways, not counting the mansion stuff that's already committed. And then beyond that, we would have to bond anything, but this is not a really great time to bond. That debate will go on in the committee.
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Amy, for your questions and for your statement. You're concerned about the IB program.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right, you too. Tracy?
I was gonna agree, but Amy hung up, that as a 9th grade parent, I also always want more information about the diploma program. I think that, as the communication, community engagement and communications committee, we should probably maybe recommend from that committee when we meet next week that maybe we put some additional information on the website, but just so that the public could know, and as Amy mentioned, she could let people know from the website information. But as a 9th grade parent, it would be helpful if we could get a little bit more information. I know that the diploma program is an 11th and 12th grade program, so I do know that they do a great job at the high school of meeting with the 10th grade parents and giving them some information, but maybe that's something that the 9th grade parents and maybe even the middle school may want to get some additional information coming in, just so that they have something to look forward to.
Dr. Reynolds.
Thank you very much, President Darden. Thank you very much, Ms. Wang and Trustee Maris. Please know that some of the information that's being requested is actually embedded in one of our pages. So what I will do is work with both Mr. Gallivan and with Laser to be sure that we can isolate that information and make it its own page on our IB link. So it will be on hopefully by the end of the week.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reynolds. Okay.
And I'm going to try to admit Fazal Siddiqui again, and hopefully he can get in. I'm sorry, Antoinette, were you ready for him?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you. Hopefully he can get in.
I think he's in. I don't see
I
his
see
name
him there. I
connected.
see his name. I see his name there.
Hello, Mr. Siddiqui, please forgive if I butchered your name. I say this to every person who comes in for comments, just as per protocol, we do not allow personnel comments at our public personnel statements or comments or questions at our public comment period. So just please keep that to mind. But welcome. Thank you for joining us, and you may proceed.
Hello.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can now. I was having some technical difficulties. Good evening.
Oh, good evening. Were you able to hear the statement about personnel matters not being discussed during public statements or comments
Yes.
or questions? Okay.
I watched it on
right.
YouTube and then I shut off YouTube. That's why there's a technical problem on the computer. Good evening. Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy New
I
Year.
am new to the district. Me and my family moved here roughly 2 years ago. We have 2 young kids. Hopefully, my eldest son will be eligible to go to kindergarten, so taking an active interest ahead of time. Amy, oddly enough, asked questions I had on similar subjects. I was looking at the timeline. It says on the timeline between the start of January, and by the 25th of January, the consultant will review the applications for the superintendent. It says in there that the community will have the consultant may be asked to meet with the community to discuss the applications. There's a small text on that line. I was wondering if that would happen, if we would have a chance within the community to speak with the finalists for the interview, or even before that, some of the applications, and maybe have an option to speak with them, or have the consultant give our feedback to the consultant in some way, shape, or form. The second question I had was about the coming year where my son will be eligible to go to kindergarten. Is that, are you guys planning on doing a stock taking on what worked over the past year, and doing a lessons learned exercise and figuring out what you need to do to change for the 2020, 21-22 school year? And more importantly, how that affects the budget that you will put up in the next few months? And when will the community learn more about what you will, as a board, will be doing and the school will be doing? Because from my understanding, we have a new superintendent coming in who'll be brand new to the school district, and the person in charge of business, or the budget side, the financial side, would also be new, which is not the ideal situation for a new school district or for us as parents. Thank you. I'm running out of time, so thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your questions. I know that at the last couple of meetings, we've had similar questions. So we do have to get back to the community in regards to how the community will participate in regards to the rest of the superintendent search. But we do plan to have community participate as they have been already. And moving forward, we just have to decide what that looks like. So it could be like some of the things you said, it could be a variety of those things. But I will definitely make sure that this concern or this, comment is shared with the search firm as well. And the board will have to come back together and decide on that together. And Dr. Reynolds, you may want to chime in, but I think that's something, I would assume that that's something looking back at all of our programs, and have they been effective, and what we've done well and have not, and what we need improvements on. I'm assuming that that is something that is done on a yearly basis. And it does, I remember one of the questions when you were being interviewed, you do take into consideration budgetary implications along with programming.
That's correct, President Darden. So on an annual basis, we do what's called a cyclical review. We put into place a course of action for our instruction. We monitor that instruction, and then we look for rooms for improvement, but mostly from a student perspective. We want to ensure that our students are receiving as much instruction in the best manner possible. This year is no different. The only difference is the variable of COVID, right? So we're looking to see what's working with our current programming, what it is that we can improve on, what it is that we can eliminate, to be quite honest. And as a matter of fact, the reason we are in the position that we are currently, where we're providing a hybrid instruction that is both synchronous and asynchronous, is because we had that plan in place to really take a look at what was working for our students and our teachers as it related to instruction when COVID first hit us in March, and building upon that platform to make it a lot more user-friendly for both our students and for our faculty as we are progressing now. And we continue to do that, and we'll put that into our mindset as we prepare our current budget that is being prepared for the 21-22 school year. So all of those are intermingled, and the long answer is yes, we do continue to do that.
Sorry, if I may just ask one quick follow-up question. When will that be shared with the community? Or if it's something I can ask Ivy to share, just so for my knowledge, for what you guys have done in the past, and look at the report or any documentation for my own information, being a concerned parent, etc., if that's shareable. Thank you.
That I personally don't know the answer to that. I'll have to get back to you on that. I don't know how our superintendent and the rest of central administration how they've done that in the past. So I'll have to get back to you on that.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
All right, thank
Should
you.
Sorry, dumb question. Should I wait for a response or should I reach out to you guys in 2 weeks or 3 weeks?
Nope, I'm writing a note down, and so I'll make sure I'll forward that your question so that you can get that followed up.
All right, thank you very much. Have a good night,
All right,
everyone.
have a good one. All right. Okay. All right. One more thing. No, I'm sorry. I was going to say something. I'm wrong about that. Okay. So let's see. That takes care of our statements from the public. We now have a policy review. So if everyone could take a look at that, it is policy 7110. And so where we're at now is it has gone through the attorney's review, administration review, and they have no changes to the attorney's recommendation. And so what will happen is moving forward, if the board agrees with the policy, we will present it on the 19th of January, and then we will adopt it on February 9th. So, Tanya. You're muted, Tanya.
Sorry. So I had a number of questions about this policy, and I think that the overarching question was that it identifies a number of officers who will be keeping track of attendance, and I would like to know more specifically how they will be named, and if this will happen at the end of, for example, at the beginning of every year, and the board will get a list of these names. So that was my first question. My second question was that there was a statement in here about, let me just find it. I marked it down. There was a statement here that says utilize data analysis systems for tracking individual student attendance and individual and group trends in student attendance problems. I'd like to know more specifically what those are. I mean, I understand that this is a policy, but I don't know if it can be, I mean, if it's left vague, I'd like to understand exactly what those tracking systems actually are. And who basically, I'd like to know who the designated attendance officers are, and then how that data will funnel from them to this seemingly central system that will sort of analyze data and allow them to intervene in a timely manner. So those were the two main questions, and then my my other questions were regarding there was a statement in there how the grades are going to be sort of, if I can use the word, prorated, depending on attendance. But I'd like to know exactly how and who will determine that, and will it be consistent between buildings, or will each building have its own policy in terms of prorating the grades? So those were my three major questions.
Thank you. Dr. Reynolds, can you shed any light on this? Were you a part of working on this policy?
Yes, I was. Yep. So through the president, thank you for those questions, Trustee Dragic. To answer your first question, as it relates to the attendance officers, each building will have a specific person who will be assigned to collecting attendance data from each of our teachers. So an attendance officer per se may not be named for each building, because it's either of the clerical support in the main office who works for the principal. It can be either person on a given day. We can have a general list based on the position within each of the buildings of who would be responsible for collecting attendance data from the teacher. So we can do that. It usually isn't necessary in practices that I've seen, but we can do that. As it relates to the high school, their attendance their attendance team is already established, so that won't be difficult to put that together and have names prescribed on an annual basis. The one thing that happens though is it limits who can touch the data in terms of collecting data on a daily basis. So if someone is sick, someone doesn't have access to the computer, there's a power outage, it limits who can do that. That's usually why we have not done that in the past. We will collect all of our data through our normal student information system, which is eSchool Plus. So the data is not just floating out or in any different type of a platform. It's through our prescribed legal platform. The reason why it's vague in the policy is because we may not have that subscription on any given basis from year to year. We may not be using eSchool. We may go back to whatever we were using in the past. Of course, that determination should not really have to affect the policy. We shouldn't have to re-adopt the policy if we need to change our student information system. So that's the reason why it was left vague that way. And I'm sorry, your third question was regarding the grading at the high school,
Yes.
right? Each school does have its own grading policy. We do make that a part of our grading policy. So while the attendance mentions the grading policies themselves are what mandate what happens with the grade. So I can get further information on that and prescribe a little bit more in depth. But this just makes mention of the grading procedures, which are governed by the policies in each of the buildings.
I just had one, thank you for that. I just had one follow-up question regarding this sort of chain of command, which has broken down in the past. And I was wondering if you yourself will be reviewing the attendance data on some, I don't know, semester basis or by whatever. I mean, some way where you will actually get to have an overview of the data during the year rather than just leaving it to people directly in the buildings.
So we do receive our attendance data when we on a monthly basis, and we do provide that to the board. It is a mutual effort in taking a look at all of the data as it relates to attendance.
So you're saying that you're watching the data?
I think we all are, yes.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Okay, does anybody else have questions? I see Tracy and then David.
I think actually Mr. Williams had his hand up earlier. I don't know if he put it down or if that was purposeful.
I did put it down. Dr. Reynolds answered my question. Thank you.
Got it. So I just wanted to ask if there's any adjustment, amendment for COVID, or does that not need to be in the policy, but have that be some sort of addendum or amendment?
Thank you through the president. Thank you, Vice President Maris, for that question. So no, you do not want to make that a part of your overall policy, as our COVID regulations can change in a moment's notice by the state. So you do want that to be separate from your attendance policy.
So I'm sorry, so where will parents and everyone be able to locate any COVID specific attendance changes or allowances, et cetera?
That is detailed in our reopening plan.
Okay, is there any way to, because I would assume, and I'm thinking more, I guess, on a secondary level, I would assume that parents can find the general attendance policy or any policies maybe through the school handbook or something online. Is there a way to put that more prominent so people can locate it so they don't have any issue? I know sometimes there's technical difficulties. There's a lot of confusion. I know I have two children in the secondary level. I personally had confusion. I think I spoke to you. I don't know. I know I spoke to several people, but I personally had confusion with my two children with attending in person and not in person. And so is there any way where parents can actually just pull that out easily instead of like looking through a reopening plan or various emails, long emails, or is there just a place where they can reference it easily?
I'm sure that we can compile the information. It will literally be a cut and paste from our policies and
Yeah.
procedures. And if necessary, we can create an attendance page on our district website that might be helpful. And I'll work with a few of my colleagues to see if that can be done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. David.
Okay, so when I look at the policy, there are some guidelines as to how many days you're absent, whether excused or unexcused, and in terms of when the alarm bells go off. And so if I go to about page 8 of the policy, you have an elementary student cumulative days absent guide. And so in September, if you're absent for 2 days, then that raises the alarm bell and you start pursuing things, right? And in October, then it's like another 2 days per month. So then if you had 4 days by October and so on and so on, it goes up to 18 days by June at the elementary level. Then I go back to about page 11 where we have this thing called chronic absenteeism. And it says chronic absenteeism is defined as missing at least 10% of the enrolled population. And the numbers when the elementary are about 10% of the whole, you have about 181 days of instruction. And so those cumulative totals fit with that. And what it says under chronic absenteeism is you're not going to wait for it to hit 10%. You're going to do something about it when you hit 5%, which in terms of like September, that would be if you missed 0.8 of a day. So if I obey the guidelines in the earlier part of the policy with the 10% in terms of when I go out and try and have the parent contact and all that kind of thing, I end up with one set of numbers. If I do the 5%, I end up with a more aggressive set of numbers. I'm wondering which way are we actually going to do it? We're going to go after enforcing that at the 10% level, or are we going to go after enforcing at the 5% level?
If I may, President Darden. Thank you very much, Trustee Warner, for that question. So it's a combination of both. We do understand that every family has different circumstances, and the response to attendance or attendance issues is different based on the household. So some parents are a little bit more proactive, so they'll reach out to the school if a child is absent. They'll send in notes immediately, and we can really track what the reason is for attendance issues that way. For those families where there might be some issue in getting that information proactively, or if we know that there has been some historical data as it relates to a particular family, we might want to be able to take a little bit more of a proactive approach in ascertaining information. So the 5% helps us in that instance, but the 10% is what is New York State required law. So here's where we are. What has not been implemented yet, but was on the docket to be implemented this year, is New York State will now add attendance and chronic absenteeism to our school report card for every school in New York State, which was a part of the reason for us reevaluating our attendance policy. If you recall, when you looked at that matrix that had allowable amount of days before we'll reach out, we were somewhere in the 40s, I believe, by the end of the year, as opposed to it actually being 10%. So that was part of the conversation and discussion, and the reason why we have 2 thresholds.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, Dr. Reynolds. I know that we talked about a lot of different things within the policy. I was wondering, and I guess I just wanted to be more clear. Will each school building have a dedicated team or a dedicated group that really focuses on this, maybe like on a monthly basis, so that they're always tracking and they're always able to find any issues ahead of time? I know many other school districts and school systems do have attendance teams where that is something that you can always catch any chronic absenteeism really early, and then you can have those strategies and interventions there. So I might have missed it in the policy, but I'm just curious, will our schools have something like that where each school has an attendance team or something that they are reviewing data consistently and really trying to track any chronic absenteeism issues?
Thank you very much, President Darden, for that question. And yes, it really is a team effort. Again, I am reluctant to recommend any static definition of what that team will look like, because
Okay.
each of our buildings are different, right? So,
Mhm.
you know, we are often having conversations through the mindset of a secondary lens, right? Where we're looking at an attendance team, where it's an attendance officer working alongside with the principal. But we also have to remember that we're serving a population of 4-year-olds at ECP. So you can't make the team so regimented or regulated. It has to firstly be a team effort where, you know, our boots on the ground, our teachers, they're our first line of defense. Our teachers are usually looking to see, they know their students best, they know their families best. If there is a tremendous concern, that's brought to the principal. It's under the principal's direction and under the principal's leadership that the team is formed, again, on a needs basis, and also to match the environment and the population of the school. So we wanted to leave that as open as possible so that the principal can make the best determination as to which members would be used on their team. And it can include the guidance counselor, it can include the school psychologist, as I said, the office staff, of course, the teachers. So there can be a myriad of personnel that can be utilized to meet the needs of each building.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Tanya, go ahead.
Well, it's not a question. I just wanted to tell you that I don't know whose idea it was, but I really loved the whole section about the incentives. I thought that was just really terrific. I just thought that was just a really positive way of approaching the whole problem. So kudos to whoever thought that up.
And that kudos goes to our principals and specifically at our high school and secondary level, the team there that was really a concerted effort to put that in place.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. David?
I had one concern that's been prompted by this policy. You just take it offline. Thank you for the updated data on attendance that we've been looking at in our packets. There was one category that looked low. Everybody else is in the 90s. There was, I think, ungraded secondary was at 80 point something. And we need to get back to that and figure out what that's about. So let us know.
All right, thank you, David. All right, hearing none other questions on policy review, our next portion up are committee reports. Do we have any committee reports?
I have two.
All right, Ashley, it's on you.
Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. The first committee report I want to present is the Governance and Policy Committee. We met on December 8th. The meeting started at 6:31 p.m. Attendees were Trustee Mayers, Trustee Williams, myself, Laser Alert, and Steve Lewis providing live stream and technology support. Dr. Chase was not able to make that meeting. That meeting was held virtually through Zoom, recorded and transcribed and broadcast. The meeting kicked off with reviewing the committee charge as we had drafted it. We reviewed what was used previously, and we are still in the process of cementing what that committee charge will be. The next topic we addressed is we reviewed and adopted our minutes from our 10/27 meeting, and the committee unanimously approved those minutes. The next thing we tackled was the chairman of the committee, which is myself, actually reminded the members to please review the new board member manual draft that we've been working on. And the committee members agreed to review and discuss that at our next meeting on January 12th. And they will bring suggestions for any updates or changes. That has now been shared out via a Google Doc, and we are working on that as a team. The next item is, as decided during our last Board of Education meeting, the Governance and Policy Committee will provide the board with retreat topics and suggestions. We talked about a January/February timeframe for retreat and reference the history of having retreats in both the winter and the summer. There was a suggestion for a January retreat with mini workshops in between. We ultimately opted that we go with a February retreat based on timing, and we will be doing further discussions and ideas of what will be entailed in that retreat during our January 12th meeting, and we will come back to the board with that information on January 19th. The next topic was I raised something that was, I guess, top of mind for me, which is, sharing my view, my personal view that the Board of Education's tone impacts the entire district in multiple ways. We had a conversation on that. We posed the question of what role can the governance committee serve in this particular instance to move this forward. We had a little bit of a discussion on that. Trustee Williams needs a little time to further think his position on that issue. Trustee Mayer suggested some smaller, maybe 2-hour workshops to work on communication, board roles, etc. And Trustee Mayers also suggested possibly having a trustee be a sergeant at arms or a parliamentarian to help keep us on track. Yes?
Am I stuck?
No.
Ashley? Is Ashley
Yes.
stuck?
No, Trustee Mayers, we can all hear you.
He's
And
still
everything's
speaking.
moving.
Okay, no, I stopped it. Everything went silent. Okay, so I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Ashley.
Sure. Let me see, where was I? Okay. Trustee Williams at that point reported that Trustee Carey in the past had suggested a sergeant at arms position as well, and that he feels that hopefully the manual that we're working on may achieve some of the goals for improving our behavior, and suggested perhaps adding a time limit to trustee comment time, much like the public and U.S. Congress currently have in place. I agree with that suggestion. During other business, Trustee Williams was able to find a previous governance committee purpose document and emailed it to the remainder of the trustees for us to review. And then our meeting adjourned at 7:04 p.m. Our next scheduled meeting is January 12th. And from that will conclude the Governance and Policy Committee report. All right, let me move on to my second report of this evening, which is the Technology and Security Committee meeting. That meeting was held on December 10th. The meeting was called to order at 5:35 p.m. In attendance was David Warner, Antoinette Darden-Cintrone, Carlos Ramirez, Laser Alert, Neil Ragudio, I always mess up his name, sorry Neil, Christina Prisco, and Diego Randon, as well as myself. During that agenda, we performed the following. We selected the committee chair, which was unanimously elected myself. We selected the recording secretary, Mr. Diego Rondon, thankfully agreed to volunteer for that position. We had a report of our technology status at Greenberg CSD provided to us by Mr. Ramirez, our CIO. We then had a conversation about funding, additional emergency relief package, CARES Act, that was not made available for pandemic technology needs. And we heard a report on a large number of devices needing repair over the summertime. There were 90 to 100 devices that needed repair due to broken screens, replacing keyboards, hinges, other physical damage. Mr. Ramirez displayed a table with a breakdown of broken categories. An order for 150 new devices has been placed, but we've been waiting on those devices for a while now, as most other districts are as well. So that's still to be determined when that will arrive. We also had, we recovered broken devices for repair and to reassign repaired devices based on waitlist priority. As a district, we talked about the potential of a policy to support the hardware itself beyond accidental damage. We threw some ideas around, nothing's been cemented. There was also a brief synopsis on closing the digital divide and what supporting school infrastructure has been put in place. We completed the district-wide distribution of devices. Mr. Ramirez shared a table with student deployment and teacher deployment of devices and more, and we are currently exploring options for more teacher needs while on remote learning. Let's see, what else is here? Our tech support department has been extended beyond district staff and students to families. The tech team has been supporting students, parents, and teachers while on remote learning. Trustee Warner asked about Wi-Fi access at home, and the report provided stated that we have provided devices, LTE Chromebooks to students that are in need of connectivity. And what basically is happening is in that particular instance, we retrieve the old Chromebook and then we assign a new LTE connectivity-based Chromebook to that student. We also have hotspots available in case of multiple children in a household. Obviously, those resources are a little bit limited, so there is a process that has to go through if there is a need. We have strict protocols in place for reporting and troubleshooting devices via the help desk. Ms. Darden Cintron asks about copay on broken devices. Again, this goes into what I mentioned earlier. We kind of had a conversation about what can we do to help our families understand, the need to care for the hardware devices themselves, especially since during this pandemic time, it's pretty hard to get our hands on new devices or replacement devices because every district out there needs them. We mentioned, potentially PSA videos in order to train parents and students on Chromebook care, as well as making it clear to the community what the cost is when there is damage and repair to the hardware. So all those things are in motion. Ms. Darden Central also asks for tools to gauge levels of success with our remote learning programs. Surveys are being can be sent to teachers. The iReady assessment was recently done, and that's going to be used as a tool to gauge learning. Professional development is being provided on Fridays via Google Meet. Ms. Darden Central asked about tools to deal with the pandemic drain and how we can counteract what we know our students are suffering. Mr. Rondon gave a brief summary of all tools used across all grades, tools used since March as a result of the pandemic, and also discussed how Google has evolved in a short time to improve the platforms our students have to use. Mr. Rondon also went over how we evaluate new resources being used by teachers, reading privacy policy, making sure tools are appropriate for school use. In terms of the one-to-one Chrome devices replacement plan, Mr. Ramirez, Ms. Ragdale, and Ms. Cardi provided an update on that, the numbers of devices, age, user feedback, etc. They're starting to plan for replacement of the devices from the first device lease program. All hardware, when it comes to IT, has a limited lifespan, and it's usually cheaper in the long run to do what's called a hardware refresh cycle and start planning out to replace units in portions as opposed to waiting until they're 5 years out and now you have to replace everything in a big lump process. So they're already planning that process and seeing where we can replace the older devices and in piecemeal fashion so that it doesn't become a huge budget item in one shot. Speaking of budget, Mr. Warner asked about the budget. Mr. Ramirez provided a status on the budget, specifically stating that last year we had to cut out our funding a bit in terms of hardware devices. And next year, we believe we're going to need more devices replaced based on the replacement plan, the hardware refresh I just mentioned. There's also conversations about a second connectivity link for our school district via the Lee F. Jackson School building. As we've seen in the past, if something happens physically to the high school, either there's a power outage or something happens there, the district effectively loses its communication link for all of our buildings to the outside world. So there's a conversation going on about, putting in a second connectivity link via the Lee F. Jackson School so that if one building is lost, we can always reroute to another building. What else? We talked about updates to the 2018 to 2021 instructional technology plan and preparation for the next cycle, which will be 2022 to 2025. Mr. Ramirez provided that information that updates to that tech plan are due in June 2021, and the new technology plan itself is due in June 2022. The rest of the meeting basically was talking about cloud services and how we use cloud services for our district, specifically some additional features being provided through Google Enterprise licenses, Backup Fi for Google Enterprise, Office 365 for business users, and options on using other tools that have been brought up by our community in the past, such as Nearpod, Peer Deck, And some of the conversations around that where there are free versions that are available, but we are in the process of evaluating what those tools can bring to us while remote learning. And, they're definitely not cheap tools. So we're trying to do our best with what we currently have allotted for the tools that we have in place and see how there is a segue or something, a feature where we can use our current tool to take advantage of a similar functionality, because those other products, they could potentially supplement, but they could also be a replacement. In many ways, they're kind of their own little ecosystem. So there's a little bit of redundancy there. So more due diligence will be done on that. We had to skip some agenda items because we didn't have a lot of time. I think we spent at least 2 hours on that meeting, and we were running out of time, and there was a meeting behind us. So we just had an abridged meeting. On the safety and security side of the meeting, we had a brief report provided to us by Mr. Parker, and I'll give you a synopsis here. Basically, at this point in time, the priority has been making sure that things are safe based on COVID-19 protocols, making sure staff are safe and comfortable, PPE from facilities, and providing extra supplies. Easy Screen has been in place for both students and staff. The staff at the high school is checking on the assessments being completed by parents. Implementation of proper social distance in the cafeteria, plastic dividers on the cafe tabletops, seating charts and aside seating now taking place in the cafeteria. So in the past, when you went to the middle high school cafeteria, you would just walk in and see the students, gathered around a table, no limit on how many students were sitting there, and just socializing as they normally do. Nowadays, it's down to, I believe it's 2 students per table with the plexiglass partition in between, and it basically now is assigned seating, unfortunately. But we're trying to do our best to, accommodate for the current restrictions we're all dealing with, while still providing some semblance of normalcy for our students. Also, the staircases in the high school have been labeled. They're directional, so some staircases are now up and some only, and some staircases are now down only. I did ask for Mr. Dean Parker to, in our next meeting, maybe just get some additional information on how the other buildings are implementing these protocols, so we could have a little bit more of a unified conversation. We also, Mr. Warner requested that we get a status of what can be reported on for our future meeting, and Ms. Darden Central asked that we send reminders of the tech equipment before the holiday break. The meeting was adjourned at 7 p.m. And like I said, there was a lot of stuff we did not cover, which we will cover during our next meeting. And that sums up the second committee report.
Thank you, Ashley. Are there any other committee reports? Tracy?
I have a question on that last report. In the beginning, Mr. Pineda, you talked about an order of 150 new devices being out, and that eventually those are going to come in. We just don't have a timeline yet. Is that accurate?
That is correct. And that order has been in for months.
And I was in a meeting, I don't know what, November maybe, where parents actually said that their children did not need the Chromebooks, and that if the school did some sort of, I guess, inquiry district-wide on who's not using the Chromebook, because maybe the family has its own computer they're using, or the particular children may have their own personal laptops that they want to use to go on to the Google Classroom and do their work. They may or may not even use the Chromebook. I did reach out to our superintendent at that time. She, I don't remember what the response was. I feel like she was saying that they would look into that. I don't know if was there a discussion about that in your committee, or I see Dr. Reynolds has his hand up.
Through the chair, Trustee Pineda, if I may. Yes, that effort was completed. We did reach out to families. We did ask anyone who no longer has a need for a district-provided technology piece to please let us know. We did receive that information from families. Those have been collected. But again, that's not a practice that we want to continue because we are committed to being a one-to-one district. So because of COVID and because we are in dire straits right now, we have completed that. But in the future, once somebody is given a device, it's expected that they'll hold it for the year. only because we want to be complacent, no, but compliant with our one-to-one promise.
Do we know how many Chromebooks we were able to get? I mean, 150 is a lot, so I didn't expect, that many to come back. But do we know how many we were able to get, and if all of our students that need them are able to have them?
I believe the superintendent provided an update from the technology department in one of her more recent reports, but if not, we will collect that information again and provide that to you. I think our numbers down for needs with repairs are down to the low 20s, if not the teens at this point.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reynolds. Thank you, Tracy, for your question. Thank you, Ashley, for your report. Are there any other committee reports?
Madam President.
Hi, Ms. Carey.
Hi, how you doing? A Happy New Year to all. Could you please ask Dr. Reynolds if he would give a brief synopsis of the Personnel Committee meeting we had, just an overall, an overall view of what we talked about and what we're going to do?
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Carey. I know, Dr. Reynolds, you were working on pulling something together. Even if you're not ready, I mean, if there's some basics that you could give.
I thank you very much for the question, Trustee Carey, and through the president. I can provide you with my complete recommendation that I'll be ready to submit at a moment's notice, or just a brief overview of what some of my recommendations will be as it relates to this committee.
I would say a brief overview. I would like for us, the committee to meet so we can, sit together in depth to go over it.
So through the president, we did have conversation about the need to rename this committee because it can create some semblance of confusion. So matters of personnel will not be discussed in this committee. That's not the intent of the committee. My current recommendation, which has not been put forth formally, is that we change the name to something along the lines of the Employment Governance Committee, as it relates to any issues that will help to create relations that are stronger in the district in terms of employment issues as it relates to the collectively bargained agreement, New York State law, as well as to our board policies and procedures. This is an opportunity for union leadership to have conversation with committee members. I believe it's the intent of the committee to have 3 board members present, one of which will be the chair, with the superintendent or the superintendent's designee, more than likely the assistant superintendent for personnel, and an opportunity to discuss any issues as it arises, like I said, as it relates to policies, employment practices, things of that.
Thank you.
And really touching on just creating how to create a positive culture throughout our district too. All right, thank you. Ms. Carey, were you going to say something else?
Yeah, when are we going to discuss the audit committee charter?
Well,
I have some questions.
We're on committee reports right now. So that was the last one. Do we have any other committee reports? David, is that your cue?
I have no committee reports. I have reported on everything every time we've met.
I guess my question is, did you want to discuss the charter or no?
It's an agenda item, so we can discuss it.
Well, I want to discuss it, whether he wants to discuss it or not, because it was in my packet, and I think I have the right to discuss it.
Have the right to discuss it.
Yes, you do. All right. Do you want to do that now, Ms. Carey? I mean, we're on committee reports anyway. So we can go into the audit report, or if someone else has a different committee report, we can do that and then end with the the charter that was shared with us.
Thank you.
Terry, I see your hand is up. Do you have a committee report?
No, I have a comment about the audit committee discussion. As David pointed out, it is on the agenda, and we can have a discussion about it at that point in the agenda. I was just going to suggest perhaps we should stick to the agenda and then talk about that when we come up at that point on the agenda.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, I did think I said to you, should I talk on it now or later? And you gave me the impression you wanted to talk about it now. So you let me know what you want to do and I'll follow your directive.
Yes, Ms. Carey, you posed the question, and that's totally fine to pose a question. I provide an opportunity, since we were in committee reports, to do either or. I'm fine with waiting until the point that it's in its agenda. That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other committee reports? All right, hearing none. It is anticipated adjournment to executive session. Let's see, can I get a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss the employment history of particular persons being considered for board action this evening and at the next meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none. We are going into executive session. Thank you, everyone. All right. It is 7:37. I would like for us to commit to get out of executive session no later than 8:37. Okay. All right. Now, host. Thank you, Laser, for making me the host. Okay. Let's see. All right. I'm putting people in the waiting room. Thank you, Steve.